The amount of freedom that is available to American citizens has rapidly degraded in the last year, starting with the day that Donald Trump got elected president for a second time. The last time I felt anything like this level of cracking down on individual freedoms was 9/11, 2001. And that's an event that I thought most Americans looking back 25 years would say, F***, that wasn't good.
What's this other jet doing? What's this other jet doing?
Our very freedom came under attack.
With the Homeland Security Act, we're doing everything we can to protect America.
A snapshot there of one of the saddest days in perhaps international history.
At least 2 people died when hundreds of Afghans rushed the tarmac, holding on to an American military.
The America that I and hundreds of millions of people knew is gone and will never come back due to the broad, sweeping changes that have been made to foundational institutions in this country. All of these changes are to support a completely different set of priorities for our federal government. A year ago, erasing trans people from public life was not a priority of the American government. A year ago, we didn't have masked federal agents combing this country looking for immigrants that were nonviolent, productive members of the community in order to deport them to countries they've never been or lock them into concentration camps. A year ago, we hadn't passed a budget which stole healthcare away from millions of poor people in order to fund more tax cuts for the rich. A year ago, we didn't have a vice president that encouraged online mob violence, going around harassing people's employers, trying to get anyone they didn't like fired. And a year ago, we didn't have a president who labeled the most mild dissent with his actions and policies as domestic terrorism. Friends, that is what fascism looks like. A charismatic leader comes to power predominantly by demonizing their opponents. They then replace everyone in the bureaucracy underneath them with loyalists who are more than willing to implement their corrupt and self-serving policies. As the communities at the center of their oppression resist, they make more and more excuses to crack down harder and harder onto them, all while the broad mass of people are either too ignorant, misinformed, or afraid to do a damn thing about it. When an authoritarian state decides that it wants to go to war with a broad swath of its citizenry, it rips the political middle out from underneath all of us, forcing everyone to choose either active resistance or passive support. This video is for all of the people now who are finding themselves radicalized, wanting to get involved, wanting to resist, but reasonably afraid of what might happen to them if they do. Whether it's because you personally are part of the ever-expanding groups of people that are being actively targeted by the state, or maybe you're like me and just care about the way other people are treated in this country and are very concerned about the direction America is going and want to do something other than boast about it. To stay safe while resisting an authoritarian regime requires developing a strong security culture. To be an effective activist as long as possible requires extending that security culture to the individuals you work with, groups you're involved in, and actions that you take. And that is what this video is designed to assist you with. I want to use my knowledge of cybersecurity, my experience operating in the streets, and my desire for justice in order to help you become an effective and safe activist. Now, the last thing I want to mention before we get into it is that this is not going to be an all-inclusive security video. In fact, there can never be an all-inclusive protest activist security video because security is insanely complicated. So I'm going to be dropping more resources into the description of this video for you to take on as a next step in improving your security posture and making you an effective advocate. The first step I want to walk you through is asking some questions about your life and your circumstances that are going to be critical in helping guide all of your downstream security decisions. video, I talked about threat modeling, which is just the practice of taking a proactive and structured approach to identifying threats, vulnerabilities, and attack vectors of something that you want to protect. That video focused on a specific threat, which was agent provocateurs that are multiplying in our streets in order to generate propaganda that manufactures a right-wing worldview of lawless liberal cities burning down police stations and running Christians out of town. Obviously ridiculous, but it works with a broad mass of people who have never even been to these cities before. This video is about threat modeling yourself so that you can identify the ways that you might be vulnerable to different threat actors and attacks. The goal is to identify your weaknesses and harden yourself as a target so that you can be as safe and effective an activist as possible. We're going to use this surveillance self-defense doc created by the Electronic Frontier Foundation, or EFF, in order to start the threat modeling process. And the first question is, what do you want to protect? For most of us living in capitalist societies like America, the first thing we want to protect is our lives, our housing, our ability to feed ourselves, and our personal safety. And this will extend to the things around us we love and care about, like our friends, family, children, and pets. There are probably assets you would like to protect, like your home, your vehicle, savings accounts, personal property, like phones, computers, tools. And then there's your data, like personal information, photos, emails, messages, notes, documents, and various types of files. All those weird files you download when you start torrenting shit. I love that piracy's back and cool again. Last but definitely not least, you probably want to protect your reputation because that impacts your relationships, your job, and the communities that you're connected to. If you're new to all of this and truly want to get serious about personal security, I recommend taking some time to sit down and write these things out. That way you can ensure that your analysis that comes afterward isn't losing sight of the full picture of what matters to you. What do I want to protect all of that from? When I think about what I'm protecting myself from, I divide adversaries into 3 different buckets based on their capabilities: individuals, agents, and the state. Individual threats are anyone who is unaffiliated with a larger organization like right-wing media or a paramilitary group who might look to do harm to me either in person or over the internet. I'm not in the habit of going out into communities that I am not a part of and trying to antagonize them the way that Cam Higbee and Jonathan Cho do. I mostly exist in my community of Seattle, and there are Nazis, and there are white supremacists, and there are groups of dudes who come into town occasionally and try to beat the shit out of trans people. But it is overall a very safe city, and I don't fear individuals recognizing me in real life and then coming to try to harm me in some way. It's mainly the Seattle queer community locally that recognizes me. I am stealth otherwise. When I am recognized, it's almost always by people who are stoked to see me and are hoping I will give them a free sticker. And sure, there are plenty of individuals who would love to do harm to me, but they largely do not live in my community. So they prefer to do as much damage as they can from the safety and comfort of their computer chairs. If there's an individual trying to attack me, it is most likely going to be by posting my data publicly online, or attempting to hack my accounts, or otherwise looking to weaponize information about me against me. Agents are the people that are connected to or supported by larger organizations that are usually part of some expressly political project. This would be propaganda mills like Turning Point USA, PragerU, and the Post Millennial. It could also be somebody who's part of a local hate organization, such as the Facebook group who tried to bully a local bar into shutting down their monthly drag queen story hour. Or it could be people connected to local paramilitary groups like the Proud Boys, Oath Keepers, 3%ers, or neo-Nazis. And yes, there are literally Nazis in the heart of Seattle's neighborhood. They popped their heads up not too long ago just to test the waters and see how safe it was for them. This flag went up in the window of an apartment just a couple months back, a mile from Cal Anderson Park, where we have been having all of these trans support events. Although I'm happy to report that within a few hours of that photo being put up on Reddit, the flag was taken down and some more appropriate signage was posted around the corner. These agents that I mentioned in the previous video seek to agitate at protests so that they can generate sensationalist content, which gives them more support from right-wing media. And they have the ability to target you with violence from their audience and from the state. So these are the types of people who fall into my second bucket of threat actors. The final category of threat actors is the state. That would be the police or other government entities, which might bring the entire weight of those institutions down onto you. The capabilities of the state far exceed what any individual or agent propagandists are able to do to you. So it's more of a question of how many resources is the state willing to expend to monitor and attack you. The US government has tools to crack passwords, circumvent security controls. They can try to get you to bypass security measures you implement, and they might punish you for refusing to help them do so. My goals are to protect people who are already being oppressed and to activate as many people into the struggle against that oppression as possible. For that reason, the activities I engage in are largely legal or fit into like the gray area of legality, like doing things without a permit. And so that makes me pretty low priority for attacks from the state. So tonight we're doing a little community defense piece. Last week in Cal Anderson here in Seattle, there was a trans person attack about a block and a half ago. So me and my motorcycle crew here of highly professional community defenders are just going around, and we went to the different businesses and just kind of let people know that it happened, because what we found is that for the most part, a lot of this stuff just goes unreported. And if you're a queer person in the area, if you don't know, you are the person that can protect yourself the best. But we're also offering, you can message us if you see anything wrong, if you have any issues, if you have concerns. You could take a photo of someone, for example, and send it to us, and we'll do our best to keep track. Yeah, that's it. So, blah. How do y'all feel doing this work, though? Do you feel good?
Yeah. Feeling it, man.
Why are you out here doing it? What makes you want to come out here and ride your motorcycle around and look for people?
I mean, you can talk the talk all you want, but I mean, you come out here. This is what we're talking about. We're walking the walk right now.
Our fucking hood.
Yeah.
But if I was dressing in black bloc and attacking federal buildings on the regular, that would put me at a much higher risk for state monitoring and prosecution. For the most part, I assess my risk based off of the capabilities of my local law enforcement offices. That would be organizations like the King County Sheriff's Department and the Seattle Police Department. In the modern day, even these local organizations have access to mass surveillance tools, like the web of cameras that have been deployed in the Seattle metro area, stingrays which act like cell towers in order to intercept your communications, and they very likely at least have passive monitoring of everybody in our area that has been as vocal and effective an activist as I have. I assume that my internet connection is actively being monitored, that every communication I send unencrypted is collected, that every video I post is backed up to a government server, and that every new person I meet might be working for the police. But as the Trump administration continues to manufacture reasons to crack down on individuals who speak out against the regime, I have been thinking more and more about what federal authorities would try to weaponize against me. As much as I want to be open and honest about my activist work, which I do not believe for a second should be something that a free country should be coming down on me for.
Breaking now at 11, anti-ICE protesters taking to the streets of Seattle once again.
March through downtown, all the way from Cal Anderson Park to the Federal Building. That march was peaceful. And I got to say that being a news reporter in this market for about 6 years, Steve, that this was by far the largest march and gathering through Seattle streets since the days of George Floyd. So,
all right, we here at the Fuck ICE protest. Oh my God, look at that little puppy. Oh, he's so cute. Oh my God. So I'm down here. We just marched from Cal Anderson to the Federal Building here. We did a little bit of improvement to the Federal Building. Did some improve the art, the paint, the decor. I would probably say there's at least 500 people here, maybe more. So far, no real violence or anything. Just chilling. I mean, property damage. Who gives a fuck about property?
Whose street? Our street! Whose street? Our street! Whose street? Our streets! Whose street? Our streets!
this was at the height of the protest. It did turn quite dicey outside the Federal Building here, as you're seeing on your screen.
Something that we all need to internalize is that the state has always been a corrupt, partisan institution, even under Democratic presidents. Our legal system is quite flexible when it comes to the misconduct and crimes of the state. So even though our government is an inefficient bureaucracy run by dipshits, especially right now, If you piss off law enforcement bad enough, they will arrest you under false pretext, they will fabricate evidence about you, and they will tell bold-faced lies in the courtroom and to the public about you and what you've done. It is never a matter of if the feds can get you. It is a matter of, do they want to? And I emphasize that strongly because I don't think you should ever forget that in your risk analysis. How bad are the consequences if you fail? After we know what we are looking to protect and who we are looking to protect it from, an important part of risk calculation is to consider what can happen if you fail at that goal. I view consequences through two different lenses: what can happen to you and what can happen to those you're connected to. If an adversary gets access to your online bank account, they could potentially steal every penny that you have. If a threat actor finds out where you work, they could create a harassment campaign to get you fired. If someone gained access to your computer, they could steal or destroy all your data, potentially impersonate you, or install monitoring software to watch every click and keyboard press. These are all examples of consequences you can see with the lens focused on yourself. But the reality is that a successful attack against you will have a broader impact on others that you should consider. Even if you are like me and realize that death threats are made by bots and terminally online individuals who have neither the desire nor the capability to follow through, which makes them at worst a psyop attack at your mental state. If your friends, family, partners, children start receiving these types of messages, they might not have the same perspective that you do, and it could be a really traumatizing experience for them. If you're arrested and the cops get your phone, they may have access to all the various messaging applications that you use to communicate with other people. And that opens the door to a lot of potential harm to anyone in your social circles. Security culture is a team sport, and it's important to remember that as you are deciding what proactive measures you're going to implement across your life. Once you understand the risks of failure, it's time to assess the likelihood of various attacks. Determining the likelihood of an attack on any specific asset you are trying to protect is subjective. It depends on who specifically would attack you, how they would go about that attack, what capabilities they have, and the value they would get for achieving success. When I engaged with Cam Higbee at the University of Washington, I wasn't looking to protect my personal information from him because I was trying to test the capabilities of these propagandists and their audiences. Prior to this event, I was really upset because he had been doxing random people for days, sending the Charlie Kirk hate mob after them.
Do you know what the word stochastic terrorism means? Of course, he doesn't know what stochastic terrorism means. So stochastic terrorism is what Cam Higbee lives off of and breathes off of. It's his entire, if you want to know what it is, just go to his Twitter and just scroll and just keep scrolling. What you'll see is called stochastic terrorism. It's where you do this number right here, where you're just like, well, I'm just saying an opinion. All I'm doing is saying an opinion, guys. It's just, there's no, don't analyze, don't do any analysis for what's underneath that opinion. Don't think about what the logical conclusions of that opinion are.
I wanted to see if I could finally get him to paint me as a target for his audience, which he avoided doing the many times I interacted with him prior. I also wanted to understand how activated his followers were and what violence they were willing and capable of doing. And yeah, they were able to do economic violence to me and thousands of other people through a targeted harassment campaign aimed at employers. But the experience provided me intelligence that I was looking to gather about his audience. I now know, for example, that the average age of his audience is significantly older than my usual, with far more people in their late 30s, 40s, and early 50s than in their 20s. And I found out his core audience is terminally online, highly reactive, and easy to stoke with anger, which makes having rational conversation with them a pointless waste of time. And despite the fact they say that the left is the real fascists, his audience is absolutely filled to the brim with racists, bigots, and literally Nazis who are willing to stoop to any level in order to try to harm their enemies. This experiment helped me understand that the threats I need to focus my attention on are the ones that come through the internet. And I do think about protecting myself IRL and at home, but I am not a leftist who is concerned about owning guns for self-defense. I have a concealed carry permit to manage those types of threats, but I know that if someone comes knocking to my door, they are probably going to be from the state. And so that is where I focus my security measures. And that situation is going to go one of two ways: either a brief friendly interview in which I kindly tell them to fuck off.
You all right, my man? Is everything cool? You sure? Okay.
It's not a nice thing if that's what you're looking
That's definitely what I'm asking about. Was it just something totally different?
for. Something totally different.
Can you tell me what it is?
No.
So it's a private thing. It's definitely not ICE related, but it's
Not ice related.
but it's not something you can tell me because it's so secure or something.
Welfare check if there's charges being filed, and we have to respect his privacy.
Okay. Welfare check. Okay. I appreciate that. That much context is sufficient. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Or it's going to be a raid where they take everything I own in order to try to comb through it and build the strongest case against me for whatever the fuck they try to charge me with. These are the types of situations that I am thinking about. This is what I am focused on protecting myself from. How much trouble am I willing to go through to try to prevent potential consequences? Security is not a binary of secure and insecure. It's always a matter of how much effort are you willing to go through in order to improve your security posture. I think about security as this sliding scale between functionality and access, transparency, ease of use, and protection from threat actors. The best way to prevent someone from remotely accessing your computer is to disconnect it from the internet, unplug it, take the hard drive out, beat the fucking thing with a hammer until it's in pieces, and then set those pieces on fire. That's an example of prioritizing security over everything else. But because security almost always comes at the cost of functionality, the baseline security culture that I call good is implementing protections that frustrate the most likely attacks from the threat actors that you're going to encounter, while still enabling you to do whatever work is important to you. Thinking back now to the stuff we want to protect, generally, the more severe the consequences for failing to protect something, the more security measures you want to implement. For example, on my laptop, I use an alphanumeric password of at least 16 characters that I rotate at least yearly. I do not use the biometric authentication, and the hard drive is encrypted. That means there is no technical way to get that data outside of knowing my password, meaning that someone would need to compel me to provide it to them in order to gain access to the laptop. And that is not legal to do in the United States. Now, it isn't unimaginable that someone from the state or a paramilitary group might kidnap me and torture me in order to get me to provide them that password. But that is a massive increase in the level of effort and risk they would be taking on in comparison to just like breaking into my house, stealing my laptop, and instantly having full access. But there are lots of things that I don't protect with that level of diligence because the risk is just far less consequential. Now, it would be optimal if I reviewed all of the different accounts I've created in my 25 years existing on the internet, because many of those platforms have been breached and are probably exposing my name, address, phone number, email, maybe even my usernames and passwords. But that is a lot of time and effort to try to protect information that probably already exists at data brokers who will sell it to anybody for a couple bucks. So what I've done instead is make sure that I create unique usernames and passwords for all of my different accounts so that nothing is reused and exposing one does not potentially put others at risk. That strategy is called containerization. And it's an example of one of the small adjustments you can make to your baseline security culture in order to elevate your overall security posture significantly. Who are my allies? Who could you lean on if you are under an attack from threat actors? And how specifically could they assist you? One of the reasons I wasn't afraid to confront Ham Pigby and his little rage mob audience was that I have an amazing support system of friends and family and community that would come to my aid in the event the worst things happened. Because the allies that I have, taking my job away or trying to smear me online just wasn't going to impact my social circles in a negative way. Unlike mainstream creators, I am not an enlightened centrist. I don't sit on the fence with critical issues of our time. I speak out when I see things that are wrong, and I speak up for people who aren't being listened to. Doing that has made me the opponent of right-wing provocateurs and an antagonist to the state. But it also gave me reliable allies who are highly aligned with my values and respect me for putting my reputation and my economic safety on the line to try to help protect them. And my allies are not contained to the Seattle area. I have friends everywhere. Allies that are happy to set an extra plate for dinner, let me crash on their couch, or help me fight legal battles. This is one of the primary reasons I recommend getting out into your community and building connections. We all need strong allies to help us resist this oppressive, authoritarian state. because together we stand, but divided we'll fall. Speaking of standing, information security heuristics. I want to share some baseline security principles so that you can integrate and adapt them to whatever your activism looks like. The first is data classification. Not all data or information is the same. Some is high sensitivity and some is benign. What's critical is developing an awareness of the level of risk that you are taking on when you learn or share specific types of information. This is another one of those examples of the team sports aspect of security culture. As you get more involved, you'll connect with more people and you'll get to know them, you'll start seeing them at various events, and you want to be sure that you are not intentionally or unintentionally sharing their information broadly, as it could put them in danger. Personally identifiable information, or PII, are things like names, address, phone numbers, emails, accounts, and all of this you should treat with extremely high sensitivity. It's also important to treat information about actions you or other people have been involved with as extremely high sensitivity, even if it's long past. Because if law enforcement decides to investigate an action, it may take them months or years to do so. There have been people who have come to protest actions and then have started asking lots of very specific questions like who, what, where, when, how, and this is the type of behavior that should be concerning to you. You should have some alarm bells in your head. Now, in my experience, these are usually just well-meaning people, excited to get involved, but lacking even the beginning foundational understanding of what security culture is. But this is also the type of behavior that could indicate that this person is connected to law enforcement and looking to pump you for as much information as possible. But at a minimum, they are an individual who might be a massive liability if entrusted with sensitive information. Developing a sense of risk around capturing or sharing specific types of information and helping everyone around you do the same is a great way to elevate the security posture of you and everyone around you. And that leads into my next security principle, which is to only capture information that you need. The easiest way to protect yourself from harm in the event you are hacked or some of your information is exposed is to simply not retain anything that you do not need to. The reason that Signal is such an amazing security tool isn't just because your communications are encrypted from end to end, meaning that nobody can get in the middle, intercept them, and be able to see what you're talking about. They also purposely avoid storing any data on servers that they own. So even if law enforcement subpoenaed Signal for everything they knew about you, they can really only provide your phone number, date your account was created, and the last time you connected to the service. Extending this principle out into how you capture information related to your activist activities can really help reduce the risk if the worst were to happen. If you're creating digital records of your activist actions, are those records being synced to a cloud service? Are they being backed up? How long are those backups accessible? How long after you delete something in that service is it still available to the service provider? These are the types of questions that you need to be asking and finding the answers to if you are going to create digital records of your activities. If you're creating handwritten notes, where are you going to store them? For how long? Who else might have access to them? And how are you going to destroy them in a way that a threat actor or the state can't reconstruct them? The less you create and the less you retain, the less you got to worry about security. So avoid capturing or storing anything that you don't need to. If you're going to create digital records, I recommend doing it off of an encrypted flash drive in order to avoid a lot of the complexity and ways that security is circumvented when you use online services. They may not be able to crack your iPhone, but they might be able to crack into your iCloud backup. If you're going to have an especially sensitive conversation, then you may want to have that in person, somewhere private, with your phones locked away and everyone agreeing that nobody's going to take any notes. Regularly purge what isn't critical. This is kind of highfalutin and cringe, but I used to think of my social media accounts as archives of knowledge where people would be able to come to, I can't fucking say it, as archives of knowledge that was created for future generations to come and learn from. But these days, I see social media and anything I create on these platforms, including videos on YouTube, as largely ephemeral, knowing that whatever I post will be immediately drowned out by the terabytes of data that are uploaded to all of these platforms every minute, all while adding risk to my life every time I post. I've shut down most of my social media or moved to read-only account so that I can see what other people post on these platforms. If you want to keep using these social media platforms while limiting your risk, you could automate the removal of posts to only retain them for a certain period of time, like a year or a month. But remember that things like the Internet Archive exist, making it possible to recover data that's been deleted. So definitely think twice before you push that post button. Share minimal information. I am someone who likes to be open and honest and transparent with people because I find that makes it easier to build trust faster and helps others open up about their lives and experiences. That's why I have to shift into a completely different mode when I'm doing activist activities, even when I'm involved with people I trust implicitly. Minimizing the information I share to other people and containerizing sensitive information to smaller conversations helps to reduce the risk of critical information getting leaked. Remember that a chain is only as strong as its weakest link. We can't always ensure that every one of our comrades has good security practices, and even when we do, it's not impossible to circumvent them with the tools that are available to the state. Having high discernment about what you share and who you share it with can negate a lot of security risks. I've given you an overview of how you can threat model for yourself, provided some guidelines on good security practices, and once again, I just want to emphasize the links down in the description that I think are important for anyone who wants to get serious about doing activist work. Now I want to talk through how I personally decide what my security posture is going to be in various situations, because I consciously go against a lot of common security best practices, and I want to explain the reasons that I think it is important that I do so. Let me share a quick story to illustrate why I think about operational security differently than a lot of other people. I went to my first 5501 protest back in April, and I wore a mask and covered my tattoos to protect my identity. I had previously gone to a bunch of events like Tesla takedowns, so at that time, I was concerned about local law enforcement monitoring my movements, tracking me, and trying to build a case against me just for attending these various protest events. If you're not familiar, the 5501 movement started on Reddit, but quickly gained support from more mainstream progressive organizations like Indivisible, Democratic Socialists of America, and even sections of the Democratic Party. The giant No Kings protest back in June is an example of another event that was organized in part by the 5501 movement. While at this April event, I brought a megaphone so that I could do some crowd work, like making comments in support of different people's signs or riffing off of things on my mind that were coming up related to the protest, or safety PSAs for what I saw the cops doing. So for example, when a pack of bike cops casually rode through all of the different people, I made sure to mention to everyone that they should be aware and observe them, because I have personally seen the incredibly aggressive, violent tactics that these cops will use to restore order. Most of my comments were met with indifference from this large, diverse crowd, but I did occasionally get some cheers out of people. But when I started making comments about the cops, and you all know that I don't go soft on the police, I immediately got boos and calls from people to take my mask off. That's when I realized that the crowd who shows up for 5501 or other liberal organizations, they have a very different perspective on people who are wearing a mask or wearing black bloc or otherwise obscuring their identity. In a nonviolent movement, optics are paramount. So if I want to influence more centrist, liberal-minded people, I need to adjust my tactics to meet that audience where they're at. This experience taught me that I can be far more effective at my goal of activating and radicalizing a broad mass of people that just isn't as engaged in the fight for liberation right now if I let people see my face. This is the primary reason I stopped wearing a mask when I went to these events. And I did it with the full understanding that I could be negatively impacting people who are trying to be out there while immunocompromised. This is also why I don't wear plate carriers or body armor, and I actually look to dress down as much as possible in clothes that are designed to make me appear approachable to the vast majority of normal people who might be coming to their very first protest action. I feel safe doing this because riding a motorcycle has developed my situational awareness. And after nearly a decade in retail, I feel very comfortable de-escalating anyone when I want to. I am comfortable accepting the risk that comes along with being more personally identifiable, more visible, more outspoken, and plenty of other people I see at these events feel that way too. If you are not comfortable or capable making that trade-off, that is totally fine. But hopefully you can appreciate and respect the diversity of tactics that people like me are engaged in, because it all adds up to the larger goal of stopping this fascist uprising as quick as possible. Social media has trained us to devalue our privacy and encourages sharing every moment of your day in order to gather up as much information about you to better sell you to advertisers. But I think now is a great time for us all to reevaluate this perspective. And maybe it's even time for us to all start shrinking our digital footprint to things that are more essential than just posting every time we go to a restaurant. I'm guilty of it too. Food looks good. Learning to operate in a less trackable, recordable, and predictable way online will improve the effectiveness of your activism and the safety of those around you. And once you feel like you've got a good handle on that, then maybe you can start posting more things online. Maybe you can start living a more public life like I do and showing off the ways that you protect your community. But you don't have to use your real face or your name or your real voice. There are tools that will help you obscure that if it makes you feel safer. In my previous video about the right-wing provocateurs who are entering communities like Seattle in order to generate misinformation, I talked about how they have to live two very different lives between their work, quote unquote, and their personal life. Their work life, which is more authentic to who they are, and their real life, which is completely fake and probably depoliticized. Well, I don't want to live a double life. I want to live as authentically myself in as many contexts as possible. That is why I feel like being transparent about the harm I see happening in my community, the values that push me to try to do something about it, and the actions that those values have led me to take in service of reducing the harm in my community are some of the best ways that I feel like I can protect myself. I will never be on the side of the status quo in this country as long as that status quo is about racism and bigotry and unjust authority on top of marginalized people who are just trying to live their lives as free of that bullshit as possible. I am a firm believer that most Americans do not want to live in the country that is actively being constructed right now by the tech oligarchs, the morally bankrupt, corrupt politicians, and the religious bigots that are at the center of power right now. Once we have finally elevated the political awareness and class consciousness of a critical mass of people, we will finally be able to take this country back from the elites and begin the process of setting things right. And until then, I'm just going to keep trying to spread the gospel, as they say, and get people started. My security posture is optimized to activate and organize as many people as possible to resist fascism. I welcome any ally to this battle, and all I really want is for you to make sure that you're taking your security and the security of your community seriously. If you are capable, if you feel safe enough, I think getting out to some of these events into your community is the best and fastest way to get organized. But if you're not capable of doing that, that's totally okay. There are a million ways to get involved, either building something of your own or supporting those of us that are going out into the streets. There are tons of opportunities to support organizations and individuals who are on the front lines doing this riskier work. Since I got fired from Nordstrom after confronting one of these right-wing provocateurs in my community, dozens of people have signed up for my Patreon and my YouTube and sent me money, and that has just been amazing to reduce the fear and burden that comes along with doing this work. The right-wing propagandists are propped up by right-wing media companies who are funded by right-wing billionaires. People like me out here resisting don't have billionaires at our backs. We just have our community and the people we care about. This work is difficult, it is dangerous, and it is stressful. So I just want to thank everyone who has taken a second to help me out, whether that be sharing the video, liking the video, just watching it all the way through, or signing up for my Patreon or YouTube, or sending me some money on PayPal. It all matters, it all helps. Thank you so much. All right, until next crime, ride fast and take chances.
Guys, jump. It's a hot bike. Yeah. You like stick? There. Wait. No, that's not it. Oh, there we go. Goodbye.
Home run, maybe? I guess? I don't know. I fucking hate baseball. Maybe then you can start protecting your community in a semi-public way. But if you're not someone who can do that, that is totally... Is that a soccer game? Oh, Sounders? Okay, cool. Oh, okay. Okay, it was the women's soccer team here. The Rain. I didn't know that.
You okay? You all good? Oh, okay. All right, cool.
Thanks. You like stickers? You like motorcycle stickers?
Yeah, I like
Here, y'all can have them.
huge motorhead.
There you go. Pick one. You like a motorcycle sticker? All right. Have a good day, y'all.